It is so sunny outside. I can't remember the last time I saw sunshine like this, and my disco ball planter is like got little sparkles going all across my room, and I really want to go for a walk, so I had better get on with this video. Hello everyone, it's Meg. Welcome to a new video. Today I am filming a video that I've been meaning to do for years. Literally, I think it was probably one of the earlier videos that I had planned when I started BookTube back in 2018, and that is a Pride and Prejudice book retelling recommendation. Hopefully it is not an unknown fact that I love Pride and Prejudice. My channel name is named after Pride and Prejudice, like Pride and Fiction, Pride and Prejudice. I love Jane Austen. I think she's an incredibly talented and just wonderful writer who was way ahead of her time. There's a sparkle on my face, please ignore that, I can't help that. But yeah, since I, like I said, love Pride and Prejudice and love Jane Austen, I've read quite a few retellings, and I wanted to compile all of these into a video, and there are more Pride and Prejudice retellings. There are so many out there, and so many, there are a couple more that I did want to include in this video, but I've not got around to reading them. So we've waited long enough. We've waited, what, like 7 years, something like that, to film this video. So we're going to do it now, and at some point in the future, whenever that may be, I will do a part 2. So I have 7 books to recommend and one that I'm going to mention. I wouldn't quite say it's a recommendation, but I do want to touch upon it in case you guys would like to read it. So I'm going to split this into 2 categories. I'm going to split it into retellings from a certain character's perspective, because they are the books I have the most of, and then I also have just like general retellings, whether it's like either modern day, like a murder mystery, etc, etc, that kind of thing. So I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. For all you like Jane Austen fans and Pride and Prejudice fans out there, I really hope you enjoy this video, and without further ado, let's get into it. So we're going to start with the books that are from a character's perspective. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is Charlotte by Helen Moffat. This is probably the most recent read out of this entire pile of books that I'm recommending to you. I think I only read this, it was either earlier this year or last year. It might have been earlier this year actually, because I got this for my birthday last year. Anyway, and as you can probably tell by the title, this book is Pride and Prejudice told from Charlotte's perspective. I'm sure all of you guys are familiar with Charlotte Lucas. We all know what happens. Spoiler alert, she marries Mr. Collins. And this book takes place during the events of Pride and Prejudice, and also after the events of Pride and Prejudice. Charlotte is a very interesting character. I have read multiple different versions of her through some of these books that I have to recommend to you guys, and it's so interesting seeing how authors take a different perspective on her. She's seen as very practical, not very romantic, and she sees marriage as more of like a business deal. So in the first part of this book we get to know Charlotte a bit more, and we get to see her decisions on why she decided to try and pursue Mr. Collins after Lizzie rejected him. And then the rest of the book is basically about her life living with Mr. Collins and them raising a family together, and basically the majority of the story follows when the Collins family experiences a great loss, and to try and relieve themselves from that, Charlotte takes her children to go and stay with Lizzie and Darcy at Pemberley. And this was a really enjoyable read. It was slightly unbelievable for me, because I'm obviously a big spoiler, so I won't tell you what it is. But there was an element in this story that I did seem slightly unbelievable. But obviously this was the interpretation of the author, and I obviously totally respect that. It is a very interesting version though, and like I said, if you like Charlotte Lucas as a character, I think you will really enjoy this. Next up we have Longbourn by Joe Baker. I feel like this is generally quite a well-known Pride and Prejudice retelling. It's very well loved. I really enjoyed it, and this book is told from the perspective of the servants at Longbourn. Even though this is a Pride and Prejudice retelling though, it does very much hold its own story. It obviously, like in the background, I would say it kind of follows the events of like the Bennet family and the events of Pride and Prejudice, but the servants very much have their own story as well. And this book really goes into the reality of what it was like to be like a maid, a servant during the Georgian era. And from what I can remember, basically the story for this is, obviously it's about servants, and then one day a new footman arrives and there is kind of a whole like spin-off of stories and drama that come from that. I can't remember much more because I haven't read this in a long time, but honestly it's so well written, and like I said, it has very much holds its own story, besides obviously being a Pride and Prejudice retelling. I love the characters because we have Mrs. Hill, who some of you may remember as one of the main servants, and Sarah as well. They were both featured in the original story. And yes, if this is just really, really stunning. This is one of the ones I would definitely recommend the most out of all I'm going to mention to you guys. Next up we have Mr. Darcy's Diary by Amanda Grange. This is from the perspective of Mr. Darcy, and I'm sure everybody wants to know what was on his mind kind of throughout Pride and Prejudice, and this is the book that you need to read if you were ever wondering that. I believe this author does actually have a version of this book, kind of like a diary for Mr. Knightley as well, from Emma, so that would be an interesting read. So obviously this takes place obviously throughout the general Pride and Prejudice story, but obviously we get perspectives or parts of the story that we don't get from Lizzie's side, obviously because it's from Darcy's. And we get a look into Darcy's mind more, and when and how he starts to fall for Lizzie, and kind of his motives and how he struggles to serve his duty to his family, but also he is slowly falling in love with somebody that he should definitely not be. And since he has such a hard, stern exterior, it's really interesting to see what he is like under the surface, under all that sternness and hard edges. And yeah, it's nice to see the story from the other main character's perspective aside from Lizzie's. So it was really, really fun. And I will definitely have to read the Mr. Knightley one, and you guys, if you have already read it, will have to let me know what you think, because I think that would be a really fun read as well. And then the last two books I have on this section are Mary Bennet retellings. So this next book is my favourite of all time, and I really wish I'd read it in a reading vlog. I think I read a little bit of it in the reading vlog somewhere on this channel. But that is The Bennet Sister by Janice Hadlow. Oh my god, this is like my fave. I am obsessed with this book. It is just perfection in every single way. As you can see, this is like highly annotated. This is over 500 pages. And if you're going to read anything from this recommendation video, please read this. So obviously, like I said, this follows Mary Bennet, who is probably the Bennet sister who is left out the most. So this book is split into 3 parts. It is set before Pride and Prejudice, during Pride and Prejudice, and after Pride and Prejudice. And I love seeing the growth of Mary throughout this book. Obviously we see her kind of growing up as a child, how she has interacts with her sisters, the relationships that she has with her sisters, and then obviously we see the actual events of Pride and Prejudice, and we all know that Mary has a little crush on Mr. Collins and kind of their relationship through that, and then also the events after Pride and Prejudice when her sisters are all married off and she is the only person left. And the story really begins after the events of Pride and Prejudice, where Mary is basically cast one to the other, from one sister to another, to go and stay with them, and she really finds her own independence. Like, Mary is such a strong, layered character. The amount of growth that she goes through in this book is absolutely incredible. She is like a pure, beautiful, like vibrant flower by the end of this book. And I can honestly not recommend it enough. I think the characters stay very true to the original novel as well. I think Jane Austen would have loved this book. It's a very uplifting read as well. Like I said, Mary goes through a lot of growth. She encounters some lovely people, some not so nice people. It's interesting again seeing the author's perspective on different characters throughout this novel, and obviously Mary's relationships with them. And yeah, I love this book to death. I haven't reread it yet and I really need to, and I definitely recommend this. Like, out of all of the books, this is the one, in my personal opinion at any rate, to pick up. And the last like perspective book is another Mary Bennett retelling, and I'm not exactly recommending this because personally I didn't really enjoy it. However, I am going to just mention it because obviously we have so many people's different perspectives on reading. You might like this book that I'm about to talk about, you might not. But that is Mary B by Catherine J. Chen. Like I said, this is another Pride and Prejudice retelling. I did read this in a vlog, which I'll try and remember to link down below. From what I can remember, this takes place after the events of Pride and Prejudice, where Mary goes to stay with Lizzie, and basically there's a whole load of events and debauchery that happens. There were a few things that I didn't like personally, such as like the takes on certain characters and certain things that happened in the story. But like I said, you might like those things. So that's why I'm just going to mention it in case you guys would like to read it, or you haven't heard of it and you would like more Mary Bennett retellings of her than the other Bennett sister. But yeah, I just wanted to mention it. Like I said, you can go and check out my vlog if you want. And I know some people would genuinely like this book. Just wasn't personally my favourite, but just wanted to, you know, put it out there in case you would like to read it. So the last 3 books that I'm going to talk about are just general Pride and Prejudice retellings, whether it's from a different period in time or whether there's like a different like turn on the story. So the first one out of all these 3 books is Death Comes to Pemberley by P.D. James. This is probably quite a well-known Pride and Prejudice retelling because it has been adapted into a TV show, I think the BBC adapted it, which I haven't watched. And this wasn't my fave, but that's just because I'm not really a murder mystery person. So this book takes place after the events of Pride and Prejudice, and basically there is a party that is happening at Pemberley that Lizzie and Darcy are hosting, and all the guests are arriving, and then suddenly there is a scream from the woods, and one of the who ends up dead? Somebody ends up dead. I think it's one of the people in the military. I think it's them. Somebody ends up dead basically, and they hire, and so a detective comes out and they have to try and figure out who kills this man. I listened to this via audiobook, and the audiobook was very good, so I do recommend that. And I definitely could not guess who the murderer was. Like I couldn't solve the mystery at all, so that was really interesting. But the writing is very good, and I think we get more Georgiana in this book as well, which is really nice. We probably get it in Mr. Darcy's diary as well. Obviously we don't get that much depth into Georgiana in the original story, so it's nice to have her included. I think there's like a budding romance between her and somebody else in this, which was really nice to see. And obviously we see Darcy and Lizzie's relationship and kind of where they're up to and how they're doing, and also how this like murder trial kind of plays on them and their relationship. So yeah, if you are like a murder mystery fan and a Pride and Prejudice fan, I would definitely recommend this. It's a very good mystery, and also, like I said, very well written. Next up is also one of my personal favourites, which is The Secret Diary of Lizzie Bennet by Bernie Sue and Kate Roderick. This is a modern day Pride and Prejudice retelling, and this is Lizzie's diary. And some of you guys may be aware of the YouTube series. It came out like 10 years ago, just over 10 years ago, called The Lizzie Bennet Diaries. I love that. It is basically where Lizzie has decided to set up a YouTube channel and is basically just documenting her life, living with her sisters and her family. So yeah, it's basically a modern day Pride and Prejudice retelling where Lizzie is a vlogger and she grows into popularity very quickly, and it's just so much fun. I would actually recommend watching the series and then reading the book. You can do either or really, but you definitely get different perspectives or like extra content that you wouldn't get from either or. I think this is a very clever story. I love, like I said, how like social media and like becoming a YouTuber has played a part in it. Darcy is the owner of like this huge like social media empire as well. And there's so much personal growth in Lizzie. I think she is, well, Lizzie's a brilliant character anyway. But I love obviously seeing like Lizzie's growth and kind of the changes that were made. I think it is a very cleverly made story. Like I said, even though it's in a modern setting, I feel like the changes that they made to bring it into the modern day is very well done. The characters are still very true to the original ones, but like we said, in a modern day setting, and I really, really adored this. So like I said, definitely recommend reading this book and also watching the YouTube series as well. And the last book I'm going to recommend is Pride and Prejudice, a retelling by Laura Wood. This book is basically a dyslexic friendly retelling of Pride and Prejudice, and this is a condensed version, as you can see, quite thin compared to like the other books and the original series. And I kind of got sent this by the publisher Barrington Stoke Teen a couple of years ago, and I got this to review and I really enjoyed it. It has everything that you need, all the basics and all the key information from the original story, just obviously compiled into a much shorter version. It was really easy to read. You still have the same essence of the story, you still very much have the same characterization of the characters, even though, like I said, there is less text. And overall it is a really great option for people who are maybe intimidated by getting into Pride and Prejudice or classics in general. They do have a whole host of classics versions of these actually, and I have the Little Women version, which I'm still yet to read. So basically, if you would like to get into classics and you are a bit intimidated, this is a really good accessible version for you to read. Like I said, it's very condensed but still holds the essence and the true core of the story, which I think is wonderful. So those were all the books that I wanted to talk to you guys about today. I really hope you enjoyed it. I must admit I have not read the majority of these books in quite a couple of years, so I had to try and remember what they were about. But I hope that I gave you at least an essence or a vibe of what these books are about. And if you are a Pride and Prejudice fan, which I'm assuming you are since you are watching this video, you will find a book that you will enjoy, and please leave any more Pride and Prejudice or just general Jane Austen retellings in the comments down below. Like I said, I would love to do a part 2 at some point because there are so many more retellings out there in the world that I need to read at some point. But I feel like this is a great start, and I feel like it's quite a good variety of books to choose from. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate it if you could give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you have not already. I will leave the links to my social media along with the links to my Goodreads in the description down below for you guys if you like to see more bookish content that you will not find on this channel. But thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you so much, and hopefully I will see you again very soon. Goodbye guys! Okay, now I'm actually going to go out in the sunshine now and enjoy it. Okay, see you later.